Welcome back to SnowRunner, guys, and today we are going to be looking at the Aramatsu Forester. Now, this gameplay is being filmed on the public test server, where features of the next DLC, which is Phase 6, are currently in testing, and this vehicle being one of them. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to walk through the customization options, then we're going to drive it, we're going to see what it's like to operate, and then we're going to dive into its performance. We're going to see what it can actually climb, we're going to see how much mud it can get through, and we're going to see what it's like to drive in general as a vehicle. However, I don't normally show default vehicles in terms of like a full-on highlight, but this thing has some really interesting functionality. First of all, look at this cabin, and also look at where the operator's hands sit on the controls. Look at all the buttons, look at all of the switches, the knobs, the dials. Everything in here is so incredibly detailed. Now let's fire it up. Sounds really good, actually. Now, let's also go ahead and go to the outside real quick, and let me actually put the, there we go, put the HUD back on, so we can see, once we go into crane mode, the cabin rotates around. Isn't that wild? Isn't that absolutely ridiculous? I mean, the fact that it rotates around like that is just insane. Now, the coolest thing, though, is when you see it happen in first-person view. When you leave crane mode, it returns back to your driving position. And the reason why I wanted to actually, like, show you guys that right off the bat is because I think that's probably the coolest feature of this vehicle, like, as it sits in general. But let's go ahead and go into the garage real quick, and let's see what we can do with it in terms of customization, and then we're going to come back out and load up a load of lumber. Now, logging has become a really interesting part of the game, not only because this franchise has had a big history with logging, but because there have been a lot of different add-ons and vehicles now with the Aramatsu Forester that have come to SnowRunner specifically for the dedicated purpose of logging. So engines-wise, we have a SI8V 2300, 2600 TTA, and 2700T. Now, that's going to give you an A- power-to-weight rating with the top engine. Gearboxes-wise, you have Special, Fine-Tune, and Advanced Special. I'm going to go with the Advanced Special, and then in terms of suspension, you get one option, at least as of right now, and then tires-wise, you have the 52-inch MHS2 and MHS3. Now, I'm thinking about going to the MHS3, but really, you can't really go wrong with either one of these tire options. Now, keep in mind that the add-ons that you see as options on this vehicle right now are subject to change because we are filming this on the public test server. Now, winch-wise, we're going to go with the Advanced Heavy. And diff lock-wise, we've already got an engageable diff lock installed, and trust me, when you have the diff lock on in this thing, it is an absolute animal. Now, you can remove the log lift crane if you so desire, but I don't think I would ever do that because at the end of the day, I mean, this thing is designed for logging, and I would want to have that crane on me at all times. And what's also really cool is the fact that you can either have short logs, or you can install the medium logging extension and use it to basically not only be able to pack medium logs, but what's cool about it is that it doesn't actually change anything about the other attachments that are installed in your vehicle. It just adds to them, which I think is really cool. It makes a really good use of the equipment that's already there. We're going to leave these MHS wheels 1. And then, of course, you have a full selection of colors. Now, really, at the end of the day, the color selection is totally up to y'all, but I actually really like the red and white. I think the red and white looks really good. I like this, like, orange and tan. I like, actually, the yellow and green looks awesome. Is it bad that I really like that? Now, at this point, we also need to go ahead and definitely throw beans on the dash, and if you want to throw some stickers in here, you could definitely do that as well. Let me throw, we'll say, the wolf sticker right over there, I'm going to do the freedom bird right there, and then we'll do the take my winch right there, and then we'll do, no road, no problem. And then, take my winch alt. Well, I guess at the end of the day, if you really want to mix them up, you should probably, like, make sure that you don't use one of the stickers that also has an alt. Now, you could also put whatever, like, exterior stickers you want on this thing, and I really am not super big on the exterior stickers right now, but it's definitely available to you as an option. Let's see, you got Wheeler, you got, let's see, Out in the Wilds. I kind of like these. Some of them do look good, and I think actually this one right here that just has, you know, the two little tires and some mud on the edges of the windshield actually looks really good. But now, let's get this thing fired up, and let's use it in some scenarios that might actually be things we would encounter in a campaign playthrough. Let me drive forward just a little bit. Whoa, you can do like a ramped flatbed, you can do like generator trailers, you can tow just about whatever you want with this thing. Obviously apart from semi-trailers and goosenecks, but that's pretty dang respectable. The fact that you have like the ability to haul that many different things, that's pretty wild. Like right behind your logging rig too. All right, so loading platform is gonna get medium logs, not medium planks, medium logs please. Where are there's the short logs, come on. Oh my God, medium logs, dude. Where the heck, there we go. All right, so there's one, and are you gonna stay? All right, 2, 3. We'll just do 3 for right now. Okay, so let's pull up a little bit, and let's go to work with this crane. Now, interestingly enough, whoa, I am doing this in immersive mode, which means that I do not have the ability to actually see what the controls do, but I feel like I have a fairly decent grasp once I at least figure out what's the open. Okay, there it is. I had to mess with it for a second, but down. It definitely feels a little bit smoother now. Like, it definitely feels like they've refined the dynamics of it. Oh, boy. I really hope that doesn't fall out because we're very, very lightly grabbing the... Okay, well, now we just gotta let it calm down. Like, it doesn't want to calm down, does it? Okay, there we go. And back you in just a little bit. And once it stops swinging, we'll drop it. Okay, so that's in the green. That's in the green, and it's packable. So now let's go back to the other one. This thing actually makes the loading process super simple and super quick. And man, does that grabber rotate like super fast or what? That seems like it rotates faster than I'm used to. Almost there. Not bad. Yo, got both of them in one go. This thing is actually like, not only is it easy to use, but it's very satisfying. Like, for whatever reason, this is a lot more satisfying than some of the other logging rigs that I've used lately. Jeez, that is so fast. Like, I tap the rotate button. I tap the rotate button. Even, like, lightly. And it just, oh my God, it yeets itself. We'll get these medium logs all packed up. And then actually, as you can see, the log loader crane just kind of sits right over there on the top and kind of protects it, actually. Now, I don't know how good of a job it would do at keeping them in there if you were to roll this thing over, which I definitely don't recommend. Ow! Jeez. Okay. Did not mean to do that. But I would definitely not recommend rolling it over to find out. I mean, if you want to roll this thing over and find out, you totally can. Like, be my guest. But I wouldn't recommend it. I don't think Beans would either. All right, let's actually... You know what? I want to see what the horn on this thing sounds like. What is he actually, like... Whoa, wait a minute. That's a new hand motion. I don't think that's a really, like, odd thing to notice, but I think that's a new hand motion of him reaching over to press a button instead of, like, actually blow a horn. Oh, come on. Yeah, wow, all right. You noticed how much the pace picked up when I actually put it into low plus and turned the lockers on. I know it doesn't necessarily need the div locks, but boy, is it nice to drive with them. That is for dang sure. Man, is it nice to drive with the diff locks. Let's see if it can make it up this hill climb. It's gonna be a little bit of a sketchy run either way, but I have a feeling that it might not be the worst thing in the world at it. It does have a high range, but I don't know if the high range is actually gonna do us any good. Oh, wow. All right. Chin in ground. It's making some progress with the lockers, but I think it's also going to end up dragging the rear. Now, the only thing about that, though, is that it might actually have an easier time of this if we had, say, for example, the short version of this lumber deck rather than the medium version. But I don't think she's getting up there. I think she's very, like, physically limited by the overhangs. The overhangs are a big limitation to this thing. But, I mean, when in campaign mode are you going to try to climb something that steep? Well, I guess if you're me, you would try to climb something that steep in campaign mode all the time. So, there are people out there that play campaign mode in a very, let's just say we don't always stick to the trail. We do sometimes, but not all the time. Let's see how you do in the mud. Now, the mud is going to be an interesting one because we're going to use the shallow mud right here at the beginning as our first test, and you guys have seen me use this area countless times to see what the initial capability of a lot of these different vehicles is like in the mud. But this thing actually seems to be doing a really good job, especially with all that weight in the back. It's got fine traction and it's in high, so no issues there at all. Now let's amp it up just a little bit by going into a slightly deeper mud section. I've got a barrel stuck under my axles. Okay, never mind. I guess I don't. That's not bad at all. This isn't high. That's actually incredibly impressive. Keep in mind, this is not a mod. This is a default vehicle, a default like DLC vehicle coming to the game with Phase 6, and it is just chugging right through. This is in high with no diff lock. Now we're going into the next lane, which this one is definitely known for swamping vehicles out, and a lot of vehicles, they'll start to struggle in here, and this one is no different. It's starting to struggle a little bit, but it's not struggling as much as I thought it would, and actually, as a matter of fact, it's still making progress. I'm kind of working the steering back and forth, and I'm sure it would be making a little bit more progress if we were in low plus with the lockers on, but as it stands right now, I mean, it moved through there no problem in high. It's still moving. I also haven't lifted yet. This has been full throttle this entire time, which again, incredibly respectable. Let's see how it changes when I put the lockers on in low plus. It didn't actually change much. It changed less than I thought it would. It actually only changed a tiny little bit. I would say standard low as opposed to low plus seems to be making more progress than low did. So I'm kind of trying to like mess around with what the limits are for each gear range, and also depending on whether or not the lockers are on, because there's a little bit of a debate right now on whether or not this thing needs lockers, and I would say where I sit on that is basically, does it need them? Not necessarily, but is it nice with them? Oh, absolutely. Need is like subjective, right? It's situationally objective, or sorry, subjective, not objective, subjective. It's situationally subjective, and, you know, when you're in a situation where you need the lockers, you're gonna want them. But there's also the argument to be made that, like, well, if you drove it, quote-unquote, correctly, you wouldn't have gotten it into a situation where you needed the lockers in the first place. But at the same time, I feel like that doesn't really promote exploration, and I always like to explore new routes in the game. And there's always areas that, you know, encourage you to explore them. They're like, hey, you should try to turn this into a trail, or you should try and blaze a trail through this route, or you should try and, you know, maybe make a trail that isn't here out of this random, you know, path through the woods. But regardless of how you play the game, I think you're definitely going to enjoy the Aramatsu Forester if you enjoy logging. Let's put the lockers on for this, because I definitely have a feeling that the lockers are going to come in handy here. Also, look at the way the suspension works. It's basically on a giant pivot. And I don't know how the propulsion would actually work. I don't necessarily know the mechanicals of what's involved in basically like a pivot like that. But watching it do its work is absolutely incredible to see. It almost crawls across the ground like a big vehicular spider. It's very, very satisfying to watch. And at least, you know, in my opinion, I think it's one of the most satisfying vehicles, at least stock vehicles, to watch drive across uneven terrain in the game. Now, obviously, going diagonally here is probably the best way, to get through a section like this, especially in this vehicle, because you can also take advantage of the swivel chassis right there, and you can actually see there's a small drive shaft rotating in between that giant pivot between the front and rear halves of this vehicle. So there's a lot going on, right? Each pair of tires is on its own individual suspension pivot, and there's a central pivot in between where the cab sits and where the bed sits. So there's a lot of complexity in this vehicle, and I feel like, you know, writing it off as it's just another default vehicle, I'm not really going to bother with it, is very short-sighted in terms of, like, the amount of complexity that this vehicle actually has in it. So even if you aren't really a fan of most default trucks, I highly suggest giving this thing a go, because it really is a very interesting vehicle, not only to drive, but to experience. I think there's a lot to be, not only a lot to be learned from driving this thing, but I think it's just really fun to drive in general. I think it's going to be very effective when you start using it for some of the logging missions in the standard game, especially if you use it for some of the logging missions that were later added to some of the early maps, like Michigan, for example. Come on. All right, I'm going to throw you in high. Are you going to run out of steam, or are you going to go? No, you're going to go. You're going to go. But you guys know what time it is. It's time for the bridge jump. Let's go and get this thing lined up. We're going to go into interior view so the camera doesn't glitch. The second we go over the top of that hill, it takes off. We put it in neutral. We pick up speed. Oh, boy. Oh, boy, Beans. Perfectly level. Dude, what? Perfectly level, and we picked up, like, no damage at all, and the engine stayed running. What the heck is that? I feel like most people would see a bridge jump performance like that and go, oh, it's got to be some kind of over-the-top, overpowered mod. Nope. This thing is a default game vehicle, and my god, is it a stout one. Now, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Hit that like button if you enjoyed, and if you're new around here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn those notifications on, and let me know if you're going to be using this thing when it actually comes to the full game. I'd be very curious to hear y'all's thoughts.